This meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee. This meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. The recording of the meeting will remain online for 4 years, and if you are present in the chamber, you are consenting to appearing in the recording and broadcast, which may also be used for training purposes. Anyone else recording or filming from within the room must not obstruct the view of the councillors, officers, the public and press. And may I remind everyone, the flash photography must not be used unless there has been agreed beforehand. We have a couple of apologies from Councillors Graham and Beadle. Councillors Connor and Chambers are taking their place. Are there any other apologies? I don't think so. No. Are there any declarations of interest? No. On to agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Are members happy to approve as correct record the minutes of the meeting held on Monday, the 10th of November, 2025?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of nodding dolls.
We have not received any public questions for this meeting, and we have not received any petitions or deputations. On to the first substantive agenda item. This is an update from the external auditors on the status of their audit for the 2023 to 24 and 2024 to 25 accounts. I'll pass over to Hassan to introduce his report. Thank you, Hassan.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, just want to update the Audit Committee that there's been a change in partner in charge for the audit. So Mark Hodgson has now taken on responsibility for the external audit of the council. I'll still be working with Mark. Mark's taken on that responsibility as internally. We've just raised the risk profile of the audit. So Mark, as an equity partner, now is the overall partner in charge. With me today is Sonny Gill. Sonny's an engagement manager responsible for the external audit, so he'll also be providing an update, but I'll just outline where he'll be doing so shortly. So what you have on the agenda today is our progress report, which summarises the status of our 23-24 audit and also provides an update in relation to 24-25. Members will be aware from when I attended the last audit committee meeting, I outlined that in relation to 23-24 that we expect to be issuing a disclaimer opinion. That's because of the context which the authorities in relation to the backstop arrangements, and I also outlined that we expected to be reporting significant weaknesses in arrangements in relation to our 23-24 audit. The report which you have today kind of provides a status update. So that's on your page 19 of the report, and also on and also provides an outline of the differences that have been identified today on page 13. And Sonny will give you an update in terms of where we currently are in relation to those in terms of status of the audit, because the report was written at a point in time and there have been some movement since then. So just taking you on to your page 20, so the report outlines even though we're going to be issuing a disclaimer opinion, we highlight there the areas of risk and areas of focus that we've identified as part of our planning procedures. So that includes the risk of misstatement due to fraud and error, fraud in revenue recognition. They're both presumed risks under international standards on auditing. Also identifying valuation of land and building and pensions liability valuation as significant risk areas. The reason why we identify those areas as significant risk areas is because they are items on your balance sheet which are large items on your balance sheet, and they're also items which involve significant estimation and the use of external experts in terms of or valuation specialists, and in relation to the valuation of land and buildings, and also actuarial specialists for the valuation of the pensions liability. Additionally, we identified the treatment of the council's share of Gloucestershire Airport as an area of significant risk, and that's because it represents a component in terms of the group financial reporting. On page 21 of your page 21 of the report, we outline our responsibilities in terms of value for money. So we've got a responsibility to report by exception if we identify any significant weaknesses in arrangements, and we're looking at in terms of looking at arrangements, we're looking at arrangements as defined by the National Audit Office and their in respect of the work that we need to do in relation to the auditor guidance notes which they issue. And those areas cover 3 areas: financial sustainability, governance, and improving economy, efficiency and effectiveness. On pages 22 to 24 of the report, we outline the risks of significant weaknesses which we've identified from our work to date. So the first of those, and this is looking at what the council itself has reported, and also meetings with officers in terms of identifying, kind of bringing up these issues with us. So the first is a risk of significant weakness in relation to council's financial sustainability. Overall, the financial position of the council is weak. The council is unable to set a balanced budget without the use of exceptional financial support. We're aware that the council has applied to the government for receipt of exceptional financial support, and my understanding is that has recently been agreed. The council for the 24-25 financial year was in a position of being in a negative reserves balance, and there's been significant overspend against budget. So looking at all of those points, then they, in terms of our responsibilities, highlight a significant the risk of significant weakness in arrangements. We also identified a risk of significant weakness in arrangements in relation to the budgetary control framework. Again, we were informed by management that the 23-24 budget and subsequent budgets were based on incorrect assumptions, which were rolled forward to subsequent years without being updated. And the council did not have effective budget monitoring processes in place in order to identify areas of overspend and to enable timely intervention in order to identify appropriate mitigating actions to address positions where budgets were being overspent. Moving across to the page, on page 23, we also identified a risk of significant weakness arising from the ongoing impacts of the cyber attack, which the council was unfortunate to suffer in December 2021. Again, we were informed by management that the attack rendered the council's financial systems unavailable for a significant period of time, after which hybrid manual and the system processes were in place. The cyber incident did significantly impact on the council's servers, rendering those systems inaccessible, and the council was unable to demonstrate the ability of appropriately monitoring, deploying its resources in pursuit of its objectives as a result. Moving on to page 24, again, the next risk of significant weakness, and this was in relation to management directing internal audit not to not to review certain areas of their planned coverage of key financial systems, and as a result of that, some fundamental weaknesses in internal control framework were not identified and reported during the 23-24 year. We also identified risk of significant weakness in relation to the internal control framework. So not having an appropriate internal control framework in place. So some of the fundamental controls, such as the completion of monthly control account reconciliations, preparation of monthly bank reconciliations, appropriate budget monitoring processes did not operate effectively during 23-24. The next risk of significant weakness in arrangements relates to financial reporting arrangements, also including the arrangements in place for preparing the annual governance statement, and this is kind of impacted by the capacity and capability of the council's finance team. Council, as we have reported within our statutory recommendations, as in recent years, not published the financial statements in accordance with the statutory deadlines, and this has, as outlined within the report, primarily been due to insufficient capacity and capability within the finance team. In addition, the council's draft 23-24 annual governance statement did not reflect known weaknesses in the financial reporting or internal control arrangements. So there are outlined within those pages the risks of significant weaknesses which we identified as part of the audit. When we do conclude the audit, we expect to be reporting actual significant weaknesses by exception in those areas. We then, moving on, before I hand over to Sunny, on your page 26 of the report, following on from those points which we've outlined, identified 5 observations and making recommendations for actions which the council should take relating to 1, key control account reconciliations, 2, budget monitoring, 3, financial reporting, 4, the internal audit plan, and 5, the annual governance statement. We also have a responsibility to consider whether the annual governance statement is consistent with our knowledge of the council. The draft annual governance statement, as it was initially prepared, wasn't consistent with our knowledge of the council, but we do note that an updated annual governance statement is on the agenda for tonight's meeting. And on your page 27 of the report, we also outline where we have a duty under the Local Audit and Accountability Act to consider whether we need to exercise any of our statutory powers, and as members will be aware, we have issued statutory recommendations in considering those powers. And finally, on your page 28, before I hand over to Sunny, we provide a status update in respect of our 24-25 audit. I'll hand over to Sunny to provide an update in terms of the status of the audit and to take you through some of the audit differences, after which happy to take any questions which members may have.
So just going back to page 19 of your agenda pack, as Hassan mentioned, this report was written at a point in time, so I'm just going to go down this list and just to confirm which items we received and which ones were outstanding. So in terms of the first point, responses to financial statements adjustment query. We received most of the adjustments, and we're working through one outstanding adjustment. So once that's done, we'll receive an updated financial statement. The next point is around the SIP disclosure checklist, where on page 25 you see a list of disclosures and financial statements were omitted from the original financial statements. Management have decided to update for the group cash flow statement, but declined to adjust for the disclosure that are included in the SIP disclosure checklist, as they don't warrant them to be significant. The next point is around the overall analytical review procedures, which we've received the response, so no further action is required on that one. Moving on to response to the value for money information, we're just still waiting for that, which management said they'll provide to us as soon as. The point after that talks about the actions what the council has taken in response to the statutory recommendation, which I understand is that later on this agenda, so we note that. The next point on to that is the going concern assessment, which management is going to provide to us. And then a couple of next points are the bank reconciliation, financial control environment, response from the Section 151 officer, which we spoke to manager earlier, and they're going to provide that to us as soon as possible, as well as the list of litigation and claims against the council, if any. And then once we have all that information, then we just need the updated AGS and the financial statements. Now we understand the AGS is on this agenda as well, which we spoke to management to. It needs a few more adjustments. So once we get that, then hopefully we'll complete our closing down procedures, and then we expect to present our audit completion report at the next Audit and Governance Committee. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
Turn your mic off.
Okay. Councillor Chambers.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. It's really good. I managed to read it all because I'm just literally subbing for somebody. So apologies if I'm asking questions that aren't sort of relevant. When you're speaking then, did you mention that, just wrote it down while you were speaking, the management directed the auditors not to review certain areas. Is that correct?
No, management haven't directed us not to review certain areas, so that's not correct. So we have, as the audit is being going to be issuing a disclaimed opinion, we haven't completed all of our planned procedures in respect of the audit because we're, as I said, we're going to be issuing a disclaimed opinion, but it isn't the case because management has directed us not to look at those particular areas.
Thanks. We've been told that forensic investigation into accounts has been done internally. Can you confirm if that's correct?
I think that will be a question for management to answer.
Councillor Pullen.
Just to answer that, we haven't done a forensic accountancy exercise, but what we have done is gone through. So when the 23-24 accounts were complete, that's when it was highlighted that the overspend compared to the budget was quite significant, as been reported in the September report and then the December report. So we've done that piece of work, and then we've also done the 24-25, and then we've also done the revised budget exercise. So we've done a lot of work on the actuals compared.
Councillor Pullen.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that report. You've given us a lot to think about, and I have tried to read through. Please bear with me. I'm not an accountant, but I have some questions if that's okay. On page 19, quote, "We are awaiting responses from management for a number of queries in order to conclude the 23-24 audit." I guess this is a question to Alison. In terms of that information, where are we with providing that information? How confident that information will be available, and how soon is that likely to be?
Since this report was done, as Sunny reported, quite a lot of that information has already been provided. I've still got to do my letter, inquiry letter, and there are also the list of litigations. I think most of the other stuff I think is received now, isn't it? Oh, and the bank rec. But yeah, I mean, it's more been about the time that we've had to do it, because we've been balancing other stuff as well. So as soon as the budget is set this week, I will get on to doing the bits that I need to do.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, that gives us some confidence anyway that these issues aren't outstanding and likely to be outstanding for a while. On page 22, it mentions, it identifies significant weaknesses, and there is a list of them. Financial stability, budgetary control, internal audit plan, internal control framework, financial reporting arrangements, all raised as concerns of significant weakness. It's not a good look from where I'm sat. But my question to you is, where do you think that responsibility and accountability lies for this, for the situation we find ourselves in, where we have significant weaknesses in a vast amount of areas?
Well, accountability would lie in a number of places. So this committee has a responsibility for a number, for discharging its responsibilities. Officers have responsibilities for discharging their responsibilities. I think what's if I was looking at, if I'm looking at it from my point of view, I think the focus should be in terms of the actions that the council needs to do to move forward and to implement implement actions to respond to some of the recommendations that have been made, so that where weaknesses have been identified, looking to address those weaknesses. And as I've said, in terms of running through the issues, it is it's very much the case that in terms of discussions with management and what's been reported to the council, that a number of these areas management have already identified themselves. And I think the issue now is looking to take action to address the points which have been noted, in order to ensure that the council's in a better footing going forward.
Okay, that's helpful to helpful to a degree. Could I have? Is that okay? I don't want to.
We'll finish with you and then go
You'll
to
close me
others.
down if you need to. Thank you. Right. Okay. Where was I? On page 20, let me just find page 20. Bear with me a minute. You mentioned the airport, and you said there. I'm just trying to find it now. Ah, there it is. The bottom box. The airport is raising significant risk. There is a risk of misstatement relating to accounting treatment of the joint venture. Could you explain what that actually means? That's a sweeping statement with quite a lot of technicality in there, with respect. So what is the concern about the airport?
So, as I outlined, whilst we're going to be issuing a disclaimer opinion, we still have a responsibility to report to you in terms of our planning procedures, what we've identified as risk areas, where if we had been undertaking a full audit, where we would be undertaking procedures to assess whether or not those particular areas are properly reflected within the financial statements of the council. So identifying it as a risk doesn't necessarily mean that there is an error in terms of how it's been how it's been disclosed or reported within the financial statements. So what we're doing within this page is outlining, as part of our planning procedures, what are the areas of the council's financial statements that we want to draw particular attention to highlight that these would be areas where we'd be undertaking procedures in order to respond to the risk which we've identified. So one of the areas which we've highlighted as a risk of misstatement, which is different from saying there actually is a misstatement. So it's a risk of misstatement is in respect of the accounting for the council's share of the airport.
And does that make a difference, of course, that Gloucester City is only part owner of the airport and Cheltenham Borough Council, of course, are as well? Does that have an impact?
It's not to do with the ownership. It's been identified as a risk area because in terms of local authority accounts, preparation of group accounts is not necessarily the norm in terms of local government financial reporting. So we've identified it as a risk area because there could be a risk of misstatement in terms of the valuation of the council's share of the airport. So it's highlighted there that if we were in a position where we were undertaking all of the procedures in relation to financial statements, this would be an area which we'd be focusing on. There'd be an area which would be looking to assess whether it had been properly reflected within your financial statements. Does that answer the question?
I think so, yes. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Chambers, do you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. Earlier I asked a question of something you said, but I've just found the text that I was referring to. It's on page 24, under risks of significant weakness in arrangements identified. We identified a risk of significant weakness because the 2023-2024 internal audit plan, which management directed, did not adequately ensure there was appropriate coverage of key financial system risk at the council. And this is the section I was questioning. Management instructed internal audit to defer their review of these areas. As a result, fundamental weaknesses in the internal control framework were not identified or reported. Can you expand on that, please? Thank you.
So this is not management asking us. So we're just to be clear, we're the external auditors. So we're not the internal auditors. But in undertaking the in respect of the internal audits plan, management outlined to internal audit that they should defer their review of certain areas, and this was a position that was made some time ago as a result of those areas being deferred and not being reviewed in the year. Then weaknesses in the internal control framework were not identified and reported at that particular point in time.
Thank you. That's quite warranted. No, thank you for that, though. Page 20 says, there is a risk that financial statements as a whole are not free from material misstatement, whether caused by fraud or error. Is that saying that there's a risk of fraud or error? Again, this is similar kind of response to what I outlined previously. So on this page, to be clear, what we're outlining on this page is when we were planning our work in relation to the council's financial statements, we've got a responsibility to report to the committee where there may be risks of misstatement. The risk of misstatement due to fraud and error, as I kind of outlined when I was presenting it, these are, and also the risk of fraud in revenue recognition. These are both risks which are presumed by international standards on auditing. So you'd see a similar risk being presented in the audit plans of our audit plans of predominantly nearly all local authorities that we would be auditing. Having identified a risk, it's not the same as saying that there's actually a misstatement in those areas. So it's highlighting
in terms of our planning, where do we see some of the risks that there may be of a misstatement? So that's not saying there actually is a misstatement. We would identify the risks. We would then undertake a number of planned audit procedures to respond to the risk. In undertaking those having undertaken those planned audit procedures, we would then come to a conclusion as to whether or not there is a misstatement. So I think, to be clear, the identification of the risk doesn't mean that there has been a misstatement. And for the council's audit, as I highlighted previously, we're going to be issuing a disclaimer opinion as a result of the backstop arrangements. So we're not actually going to be in a position where we're undertaking all of the procedures which we would have normally undertaken in response to the risks that we've identified. Does that answer the question?
Piers, do you want to?
Thank you for that. My response to that is, can you confirm there's been no misstatement?
No, we can't confirm there's been no misstatement because we haven't undertaken our planned audit procedures, and we're going to be issuing a disclaimer opinion in respect to the council's financial statements.
Piers, do you want to have a say?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to go back to the point that you made on page 24 about internal audit. And it is the case that we had extensive discussions with the then Section 151 officer about the work that we were due to undertake. But what you have to remember is that not all of the systems were available. So when it comes to undertaking our work, if the information isn't there on the systems to be tested, it was decided that we should defer that work from that point in time. So that, just to add a bit more detail to that, it wasn't that, we didn't have a plan or that we weren't sort of willing to undertake the work. It's just that the systems weren't there. The information wasn't there. And at the time, internal audit did provide officers from ARA who were seconded to Gloucester City Council to help the council in their recovery. So that involved, for example, transferring information from manual records onto the new computer system. So we tried to help the council as much as we could and in the best way that we could at the time.
Thank you, Piers.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the progress report. You gave some context on page 17 for the audit delays, recovery phases. You explained that rebuilding assurance after disclaimed opinions will take several years and varies by authority. So in plain English, what does rebuilding assurance look like for Gloucester for Gloucester City Council for the next 1 or 2 years? 12 to 24 months. Yeah.
So as outlined in the statutory recommendations, you'll be aware that there is a table kind of outlining in terms of for each of the financial year what the publication date is for those respective financial years, and also what the backstop date for the audit was for those years. And one of the reasons that we've issued the statutory recommendations is that there's been, those publication dates for preparing financial reports have been significantly, missed by the council, and the dates for concluding an audit by the backstop date has also been missed. So for the 24-25 financial statements, I know the council were awaiting confirmation of the EFS support in terms of before the 24-25 accounts could be published, but so their 24-25 accounts are yet to be published. The backstop date for 24-25 has long since not long since. The backstop date for 24-25 is going to be at the end of this week, so it will be after the backstop date, but the publication date is long since gone. So it's going to be a period where 24-25 accounts will be disclaimed as a result. It's where you have where you have a disclaimer opinion, then the FRC have published a report where it outlines in terms of providing a timetable. So usually the next 2 years would then be disclaimed before you, in the third year, move to a qualified position, and then the fourth year moving to, if all things being equal, moving to a position where you can get into an unqualified audit position. But within that context, where what we would for the 25 20 so for 25-26 financial year, we'd be looking to undertake as many of our planned audit procedures as possible in relation to those accounts. It would still result in a disclaimer opinion, but what you would see in our audit results reports, it would outline the areas where we've been able to complete our work and the level of assurance which we've obtained in those areas.
If I could ask one more. Thank you, Chair. So from your perspective as our external auditor, what's the most useful thing that this committee can do between now and April to help the recovery?
I think in terms of this committee, for you're talking about the recovery of the financial statements audit. So 24-25 has gone. For 25-26, the committee's got a responsibility to review the draft financial statements, to challenge and to raise questions about those financial statements, and it may be that an appropriate course of action will be outside of this committee to run through what an audit committee's roles and responsibilities are in terms of discharging their responsibilities in looking and reviewing the set of financial statements. So I think that might be one for taking outside of this meeting and to consider that in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, that's useful. Thanks.
Councillor Hyman.
This is probably a question for the head of finance, but it stems from the report. It says here on recommendation 1 on page 27, we recommend that the council urgently review the finance team to ensure that there is sufficient capacity and capability to support the breadth of its activities. Do you have that capacity and capability?
Thank you. The statutory recommendations that are listed here, there's a separate report on the agenda quite near the end, I think, where I update on that. But yes, we've had an independent report done on the finance structure, and that is going to the cabinet on the 11th of March, and it does involve additional capacity, which I think has been well documented that we haven't got enough capacity within the finance team, and we also built additional funds into our EFS application for finance resources and property resources to enable us to deliver the recovery plan. Really, it's necessary.
Thank you.
Councillor Lewis.
Stop button. Okay, I mean, a lot of this to me is looking towards the future. We've seen what's happened in the past, where the mistakes, omissions, whatever you like to call them. So to me, on page 26, the 1 to 5 recommendations, it's the key control account reconciliations, budget monitoring, financial reporting. If we get that right, we will be then in a much better place to see historically and for the future. So where are we exactly with those? As I said, somebody was saying about the bank reconciliations haven't been done. So where are we with them to actually get it all into place?
So the bank reconciliation that Sunny's been talking about, it's waiting for some documentation from us, so that's been done. In terms of making sure our financial controls are back in place and working, over the last 6 months we've done quite a lot of work in terms of making sure that the key financial controls are in place, key reconciliations on a regular basis, and we've just agreed with internal audit that the audit will start in mid-March in terms of our reconciliations.
I like the green, actually. It's gonna, yeah, it's just a fundamental thing that we've got to have confidence that what we're getting presented to us, that we can actually make a decision on. That's where the audit committee comes in to make sure that's all A-OK. I can see a lot of work has gone on, and a lot of work still to do, but I think we're going on the right way. I think Bish wants to come in.
Just to emphasise that we are working. I had a really helpful meeting with the managing director a few weeks ago, and Spencer has been speaking with the Section 151 officer, and we are all keen to reassure all members that the council's key controls around risk, around governance, and around its finances, that we provide you with that assurance through our work. And so you will see that in the draft internal audit plan when that comes before you, that our work will address a number of the issues that have been raised by the external auditor.
I would say, in answer to your question in terms of what the audit committee could do, that the audit plan that will come forward, Pish mentioned in the April meeting, is to make sure when you go through that in detail that you feel satisfied that that's covering the areas that you from everything that's been provided to you that has been highlighted as risks.
Councillor Kundo.
Thank you very much. The council's facing local government reorganisation. Vesting day will be 1st of May, I believe, 2028. Where do you see us being? Obviously, we won't have repaid all the debt, but are you confident that our books will be straight for the new regime, whatever that looks like?
So when we put in the application for exceptional financial support, we also had to put a recovery plan in. So it's really important that we deliver that recovery plan, and it is challenging. And we have, as part of our budget, we've got £1 million savings built in for 26-27 and a further £1 million for 27-28, which haven't been articulated yet. So if we can deliver our recovery plan, then we should be, from a medium-term perspective, we should be financially sustainable. But it does rely on us delivering that recovery plan, which is challenging.
Lordy?
Has everyone had their question? Answer the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure who this question is to, but it's regarding protections in place for protecting ring-fenced money. For example, the £11 million of levelling up money that's been provided from the government, which must be used for specific purposes. I understand from discussions with Officer that this has been used in the general fund for cash flow purposes at times. Can you advise on the legitimacy of that?
So yes, that's the LUF funding you're referring to, isn't it? Yeah. So we've had that funding in to our cash flow. So it's protected for the purpose of the Greyfriars project. But in terms of cash flow, instead of borrowing, when we've got that money, we use that money to cash flow. And then if we need to borrow, we will borrow. But we won't borrow and take out additional costs from borrowing when we've got the cash flow in place. But that doesn't mean that money is not protected for the specific project.
I think that is the end of these questions. Are members content to note the progress report?
Yep.
Thank you. It is noted. Thank you very much to Ernest & Young for coming, Hassan. If you'd like to leave the meeting now, you're very welcome to. I know you've got a long journey to go. You're very welcome to stay if you wish.
He's had enough by now. Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is the Internal Audit Activity Progress Report. So,
Could I suggest we take that report next?
okay,
So that is
that's it, which is
one's
one,
that?
it's the last.
the last report. The progress report. The substantive item on the agenda this evening is a report from the Head of Finance and Resources on the progress made in the meeting of the statutory recommendations issued by the Council's external auditors. Over to you, Alison.
Thank you, Chair. So we've already talked about a few of these, the items and the sort of actions we've already done tonight. But we've got the 3 statutory recommendations that we were issued with at the end of October. Those went along to members of council in November, and along with the actions that we've put in place to deliver on the statutory recommendations. So what this report is doing is updating you on progress so far. So if I draw your attention to 4.2, which is the first statutory recommendation, and this is about the finance team capacity. So as I say, that's already been mentioned this evening. So in September, when we did the first financial... Oh, sorry. It's right at the end of the second addendum. Yeah, that's okay. Sorry, apologies. So it's 4.2 on that report. Okay. 12. 12. 12. Okay. Okay, so just on, so the first statutory recommendation, 4.2, as I said, following the Cabinet report in September, which was the first financial update report we did, the head of paid service was tasked to do a review of capacity and capability of the finance service. So that's been carried out by the LGA, and the recommendations are coming to the Cabinet meeting in March, with recommendations for a proposed new structure, putting in additional resources to the finance team. So once that's been approved, then, well, hopefully it'll be approved, then we'll then need to action that and advertise the posts and put that capacity in place. Just to make sure that we keep on track with the statutory recommendation in terms of the production of a statement of accounts. I am in the process of recruiting an interim accountant to help us do the 25-26 close down. So just for a short period, a sort of task and finish role, because by the time we fill the structure, obviously, if it's not agreed till mid-March, that we'll already be into close down. So that's what I'm going to put in place. So statutory recommendation 2, so 4.3, that is about the statement of accounts for 24-25 and 25-26. So we've produced the statement of accounts 24-25, but we haven't published them. We were waiting for the outcome of the EFS application because we were in negative balances for 24-25. We were advised by SIPFA not to publish the accounts until we had confirmation of that. So we've had confirmation of that this afternoon. So we will look to publish the 24-25 accounts. It'll definitely be by the end of March, but we'll do it as quickly as we can. But obviously this week we're fully occupied with delivering on the budget. And in terms of 25-26, as I've said, we're looking to get an interim resource in to help the team deliver the 25-26 accounts to the statutory deadline, which is the 30th of June. And that's to get us back on track for 25-26. So we meet the statutory deadline, and then so with the assistance of our auditors, we can meet the statutory backstop date of the 31st of January 27 for the 25-26. So this is all about us getting back on track in terms of timescales. It's challenging with the resources we've got. It is challenging, but that's that's the plan we've got in place to deliver on that. And then the third statutory recommendation is about financial monitoring and budget monitoring. We've relaunched a budget monitoring process. We started that in December last year, and that is an exercise where we've allocated a finance officer to every budget officer, and there are monthly meetings going on. So there's a real increase in knowledge in terms of the budget officers and also the finance officers working together, which will increase the budget monitoring process and financial reporting process, and it already has in terms of gaining a lot of knowledge. And then the information from those meetings goes into SMT on a monthly basis. So we've had 2 reports so far, and that will continue. And clearly, April, May, we don't do much budget monitoring in April and May while we're closing down, but that process is in place now, and as I say, the knowledge has already increased significantly. I mean, as like with any process, when you implement a new process, you get lots of questions, and it generates a lot of extra work, I guess. But that's a positive step, because people are gaining, taking much better ownership of their budgets, and moving forward. That'll put us in a much better place to know if there are any issues, budgetary issues. We know in a timely fashion, and it's much easier to deal with those sort of issues when you know at the time, rather than it being historical and it's too late to do much about it then. So that's really positive. So in terms of the 3 statutory recommendations, there's still quite a lot of work to do, but we've made real positive steps.
Councillor Pullen.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, the issue that you talked about managing a finance officer with a budget manager, I think is absolutely crucial. And so I'm pleased to hear that. That must give us confidence to know that our finance team are working very, very closely, for want of a better term, with people on the coalface who've got a service to deliver as well as to manage their budgets. So that's great. And I feel confident, I hope I'm confident, and you must be, that's going to work. So I'm pleased to hear that. Thank you. The issue of, here we go again, capacity and capability in the finance team. Yes, okay, it's built into EFS, so that's good. It's coming to March Cabinet, where I'm assuming that it will be passed. I can't think of a reason why it wouldn't be. The problem is then, of course, is actually finding staff to occupy those crucial posts. And we know how difficult it is, let's be honest, to attract staff with financial expertise to work in local government. This is sort of one of those questions. I mean, when would you expect, or when would you hope, to say, okay, I've got the finance team that I want now. I feel confident in who we've got, that we've got all vacancies filled, and we can move forward with some confidence. I know that's, there's a bit of that, but what's your sort of feeling? What's, what are you working towards?
I guess it is difficult to say, but if we can successfully fill the posts that may go externally, I would like to think we've got a structure in place for July. We've got some posts within the team that are filled at the moment by temporary staff, and I say temporary, but they've actually been in posts for quite some time. So I would hope that we might be able to fill some of those posts a little bit quicker. But But yeah, it depends. It's very difficult to recruit local government finance officers. So if we struggle to recruit first time round, then obviously that will delay things. But that's the reason I'm going to get an interim in to help with close down, so that we can at least make sure that we're on track with that.
Okay, thank you. Let's just hope that is where we go. But I am encouraged by that, so thank you.
Any more questions for Alison? No.
Go, Gadget.
Are members content to note the progress being delivering the requirements of the 3 statutory recommendations? Okay, that report is noted. Thank you, and you're free to go now. The next item on the agenda is the Internal Audit Activity Progress Report 2025-26, which informs the committee of the activity progress of the Internal Audit Service in relation to the Internal Audit Plan 2025-26. Could I please remind members that if anyone wishes to discuss any aspect of Annex 1, we will need to consider resolving to exclude the press and public before doing so, as this contains exempt information. Piesh, will you?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so good evening to you and to the committee. So on page 35 of your agenda, you have the Internal Audit Progress Report. And I'm delighted to say that since your last meeting, we've delivered an audit on the freedom of information, and we've been able to provide that with an acceptable level of assurance. On page 38 of your agenda, you have the Open Recommendation Monitoring Report, and on page 39 you also have a table which shows the recommendations. And on page 40 of the agenda pack, you have an update from the counter-fraud team on all of the work that they have been undertaking. In particular, so far to date, in this financial year, they have had 39 referrals made to them, of which a number have gone on to be looked at, and others have been triaged, and it's decided not to proceed with those. So, and there's also an update on the National Fraud Initiative work as well. So happy to take any questions, Chair.
Are there any questions for Piesh? Councillor Chambers.
Thank you very much, Chair. With regards to page 40, 4.6, if you could let me know, it says the new whistleblowing policy and reporting process is now live on the city's intranet. It provides more streamlined and robust way of reporting and monitoring referrals. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, if that's okay? Thank you.
Yes, so our counter-fraud team have worked with officers to update the whistleblowing policy, and also to work on the council's website to have that visible there. So it is get my tongue in gear, an anonymous way for members of the public, members, also staff at the council to raise any issues. That goes directly to the counter-fraud team. As I say, it is anonymised. They have the ability, or the option, if you will, to leave contact details, which is often quite useful if we need to undertake any investigations, but they don't have to do that. The counter-fraud team, they check that frequently throughout the week, and if there are any referrals, those are then triaged by them to see if we can take it forward, how we take it forward, and we would then contact officers with regard to any investigations that we do undertake.
Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. Sounds like a lot of work's been going on, which is great with that. This isn't a question for you, this is more of a statement, really, because I'm a bit concerned because a question was raised in a Cabinet members meeting with the Cabinet, and they said the only changes to the policy was personnel changes with regards to contact details. So I'm kind of taken back and a bit shocked by the answer I was given in Cabinet, the written answer. So thanks for that. It was really good that the policy's been updated. So I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Piyush? Councillor Pullen?
You know you want to.
Thank you. Yeah, it follows on to the from the question really to from Councillor Chambers. Yeah. So these 11 whistleblowing allegations, these are actually external issues, aren't they? These aren't to do with internal issues around staff whistleblowing, are they? These are external in terms of the clients and the customers that the council serves. Is that right?
Could I get back to you on the specifics of that? Because I'm looking at that. I'd have to go back and see what the 11 referrals were. Now, if they were anonymous, we wouldn't know who actually raised them. But it does say there on page 40 that of the 11, one was regarding a health and safety matter, which was for another council. It wasn't even to do with this council. But if you're okay with it, can I make inquiries of the counter fraud team and get a little bit more information behind that?
Yes, thank you. That would be helpful. I do understand the delicate nature maybe and confidentiality of some of these issues, but yeah, if you could, that would be useful. Thank you.
Tanya?
Thank you. Just to clarify a point in relation to Councillor Chambers' question, the question to Cabinet was specifically about the updates made in December. Those were just changes to personnel. I would have to refer back and find out about the reference to it being a new whistleblowing policy in this report, because I'm not aware of anything else new in the version that was published in December. So I think we can take that away and just double check. Because that was an accurate response at the time. Obviously, I've only been monitoring officer for a short time, so we can take that away and just double check if there was anything else new, but it definitely wasn't in the December update.
Are there any other questions for Piyush? Okay. Oh, sorry. Councillor Chambers.
So sorry, Chair. I thought I was going to wait to see if anyone else spoke then before I ask a question. I'm not sure which officer this would be in relation to with regards to item 7, question 40, 4.6 whistleblowing again. Can you explain how the council whistleblowing reports are now being identified, monitored and protected, particularly in light of recent statements that the council's financial position was uncovered by a whistleblower, which was later retracted? Specifically, how and when do whistleblower protections apply, given that an individual may raise serious concerns without explicitly labelling them as whistleblowing, if that makes sense. But so in a nutshell, basically, if I raised a concern with regards to, I don't know, just say the finances of the council and just said that I think they're in dire strait, things are being missed, I want to raise this, what defines that as whistleblowing and what defines it as just raising an issue?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood the question. I mean, if anybody raises a whistleblowing concern via this methodology, then we would, as I say, triage that, see what the allegation is, and if we can, we would proceed to a full investigation. I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm not sure I understood it.
It partially answers it. So basically, we should point people to that way of raising concerns.
Absolutely. Receiving allegations on a whistleblowing hotline, if I just talk generally, is sign of actually a healthy organisation that people can raise concerns, they're able to raise concerns in an anonymous way if they so wish, and that somebody will look at those seriously. So we always publicise the whistleblowing hotline. We do that with all of our councils, and where necessary, we encourage people to use it. Quite often, there isn't anything to look at, but at least they have that ability to raise an issue. They don't have to, as it were, feel that they're not able to raise something that could be important.
Glenn, do you?
Yeah, I think this refers to a conversation I had when I referred to a situation whereby somebody had a conversation with their boss about something to do with their day job, and I mistakenly classified that as whistleblowing, but it wasn't whistleblowing in the strict sense of the word, because whistleblowing is whenever you take a concern anonymously, really, to somebody independent.
That's incorrect. It doesn't have to be anonymous to be a whistleblower.
Well, yeah, it doesn't have to be anonymous, but if you go outside the normal process, this was just a normal work environment issue, where somebody raised an issue that to do with how a certain thing was done, and they wanted to check it, and that's the sort of conversation I would expect employees to have with their bosses. So it wasn't whistleblowing. I think that was me over-dramatising it.
Thank you for explaining. Are there any other questions from members? No? Are members happy to note the report and accept the progress against the internal audit plan 2025 to 26?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the annual governance statement, and another for Piesh to go through.
Sorry, Chair, I don't actually have it in front of me. I don't know why, but the agenda pack I have is missing some of the documents. So is this the 23-24? Yeah. Okay, so based on comments, so we had the AGS, the Audit and Governance Statement that had previously been presented to the then committee for 2023-24. In light of some of the issues that have been raised by the external auditor, and due to their suggestions, we have added some more commentary to the 23-24 annual governance statement to take account of what we know now, just to provide some more context.
Are there any questions for Piesh on this? Alison.
I'll just make a quick comment that we were asked by the external auditors following the reports that we had published and highlighted, and I guess this is what came out as statutory recommendations, to revisit the AGS for 23-24, which is quite difficult because obviously that was a moment in time, and it's quite a long time ago now, and a lot of the officers aren't the same officers. But that's what we've done. We've looked at that and sort of addressed some of the issues that have now come out as part of the work that's been done. It might be so the AGS, this updated AGS will be looked at by the auditors as part of the 23-24, which is the work they're doing now. So it might be that we have some more discussions. It might change a little bit again because we need to have some more discussions with them. But this is how we've updated it to try and address some of the issues that have been raised. I know that sounds a bit confusing, but that's the purpose of this report.
Does anyone have any questions of the updated AGS?
No, that's fine.
No? Are members happy to approve the updated 2023-24 annual governance statement, including the actions planned by the Council to further enhance good governance arrangement?
Yep.
That report is noted. Moving on to the next agenda item, which is a Treasury Management 6-monthly update. This is the report of the Accountancy Manager, Richard. Would you like to introduce the report?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I believe this report's already gone to Council just because of how the meetings have landed. The report has already gone to Council, so it's fallen out of the rotation a bit. But I could take you through it, or if you have any questions, since it's already gone, I'm happy to do whichever. I'm just conscious we've got the strategies coming up, and obviously there's a lot more detail in those. I could take you through the headline figures anyway, just to make it easier. Yeah. So it talks a lot about the updates on our borrowing and our investments, what we've been doing in the year to date. So this would have been up till September, which feels an awful long time ago now. But the headlines from it really are in the annexes at the back. So in the appendixes, sorry. So in Appendix 1, it talks about our prudential indicators. So those are the authorised limits that you agree at council as part of the Treasury and capital strategies. So they talk about our limits for external debt. So our operational boundary was 285 million. That's basically the early warning sign. So we shouldn't ever get close to that number. But if we do start to get close to it, that's when we sit down and we're reviewing this all constantly, but that's when you start having much more thorough reviews of our position. And then our authorised limit of 305 million, that is our absolute limit of external debt. So any higher than that, we can't go. It has to be agreed. The limit has to be increased by full council. So it shows on here what we expected our budgets to be for debt and our investments and our net borrowing. So we do it as the net borrowing of 270 million. So at the halfway point in the year, we were at 222 million net borrowing. So we had gross borrowing of 240 million and then investments of 18 million. That was just due to the cash flow at the time. Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't mean. I don't want to. You carry on. I'll just ask a question after when you finished. Sorry.
Yeah, apologies. But yeah, so it might have meant that we'd received council tax in that month, and we didn't need to pay a precept in that month, which sometimes happens throughout points of the year. And then further on to that, it talks about our structure of debt. As the interest rates are going down, we hold a lot of our debt short term, so we can take advantage of reducing interest rates. So that's short term, anything from 6 months to a year. All the long term debt is with the PWLB. During this period as well, we had a loan which is known as a LOBO loan. So that's a lender's option, borrower's option loan. There was something that was sold to councils back in the early 2000s. It basically means that it's a variable rate loan, but the loan rate is locked in place until the lender executes their option to increase the rate. And at that point, we can leave the loan. So obviously, it must have been secured at quite a good rate. Well, it was secured at a good rate. It's been sold between pension funds, and they executed their right to ask us to increase the interest rate. And as soon as that happened, we left the loan because they're never going to execute their right to reduce the rate. So they're going to lock it in at a higher rate, and it's going to stay at that rate for the end of the loan. So we took the decision to leave that loan. And then we moved further on to talk about the interest rate forecast for the period. And then the final part is talking about what investments we held at the end of September 25. And then the table underneath is extracted from the Treasury strategy that's agreed by council. This one would have been agreed by council in February 25. But yeah, if you have any questions, let me know.
Councillor Pullen, did you have a question?
First of all, thanks, Richard. You and I had a long discussion before the council where this was discussed, and can I recommend to members that actually the sort of discussion that we had, I think, would be really useful to have with members of this committee to try and get our heads around the Treasury management strategy, the ins and outs. At that level, we don't need to know the intricate detail. That's your expertise, obviously. So can I say thanks for that and recommend that everybody else, takes up that opportunity. There on page 54, I think. Is it page 54? Hang on. Yes, it is. Yeah, you talk about no new borrowing, and that's one issue. And then in the last sentence of 4.1, you talk about the forum and say once the asset is complete. I know we all want the forum to be complete as, as soon as possible. When we say the forum is complete, do we mean that the construction phase has finished and we are ready to look for customers to occupy it, or by saying the asset is complete, actually the forum is full and giving us a good return on what it is? What do we mean by complete?
So first of all, about our conversation we actually had a discussion earlier today with our Treasury advisors about offering training for members. So we'd really encourage members of this committee, but also wider members to join on the training course. I've been on them before when I used to work at a county, and they're really, really helpful. But yeah, talking about new borrowing. So it says there was no new long-term borrowing. So we only borrowed short-term in that period. So it wasn't we didn't indicate any long-term borrowing. And when it talks about the forum being complete, there's no real standard of what complete means. So once the asset's online and once the hotel's online, that's when we would classify it as being complete, the asset being no longer under construction.
Right.
And then, yeah, so at the moment we're able to, when an asset's under construction, you can capitalise the interest costs. So you can wrap it up into the cost of construction. Right. And then you can, therefore, as you depreciate the asset, you're spreading that interest over the life of the asset.
Okay, that's helpful.
Councillor Bucket.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to page 51 to 53, investment priorities. It's good to see, I think, that investment returns have been robust. So thanks for that. But given the current financial pressures, how are officers balancing getting return with keeping our cash safe?
So we try and keep as low a cash as possible. As long as if we can successfully managing your cash flows, because we're borrowing a lot of money because we've got a big capital program, so we've got a lot of borrowing. It generally costs a lot more to borrow than what we're going to get on our investments. So therefore we want to keep our investments low, and therefore we're keeping our borrowing lower. So how we structure our returns on our investments is set out in this report, and it's what's advised by SITFA. So we look at the security of the cash first, and then we look at the liquidity, how quickly we can access it, and the last thing we look at is the yield.
Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I previously in council raised concerns about how the money is invested with different banks when they've been Aberdeen due to sort of penalties they received through the ombudsman, etc. Is there an agreed ethical investment policy for Treasury management? And if not, is that something the council intends to develop?
I think our advisors, MUFG, so they would have built into what they advise us a clear ethical standard. I can get that in paper, or I can speak to them, and if it's something that you want to discuss when we talk about the strategy for next year, that's something we can put in there. But at the moment, it's not something that we directly create or put into the strategy.
Any more questions for Richard? Are members content to note the contents of the report?
Yep.
That report is noted. The next agenda is another Richard's report, and it's the Treasury Management Trust Strategy for 26 to 27. Richard, do you want to take it over?
Thank you, Chair. So I'll run you through this report quickly, and then if you have any questions, let me know. So the first key piece of information is on page 76 of the report. So this is talking about our capital prudential indicators. So this is the part of the report that we ask you to note for council and what we ask council to agree. So we're talking about, the first table shows our capital expenditure. So so it shows all the capital expenditure split out by each of the different areas. And then in the table below that, it takes the capital expenditure, it takes away any grants that's used for that expenditure, any capital receipts, so that's where we sell assets and we use that money to pay for new assets or to pay off borrowing, and any revenue contributions. And that figure at the bottom of the table, which is our net financing need for the year, is how much we expect to need to borrow in that year to cover our capital costs. So that net financing need feeds into the table on the following page, on page 77. So this is talking about our capital financing requirement. So that's how much, that is where our assets are and how much we expect those, for the value of the assets, how much we expect to need to borrow to pay for those assets. So it takes our CFR from the previous year, it adds any movement, which is any new requirement to borrow. It takes off MRP, which is your minimum revenue provision. So that's a provision that we need to make to pay for future debt. And then for us, because we've got the King's Walk lease liability, it takes that into account as well. And as you see, that figure's reducing. So that's to do with the indexation of money. So £1 5 years ago is worth less today in spending power. The 2.3 talks about our minimum revenue provision policy. So that's talking all about how we charge at MRP. We've done some work recently with SITFA around the MRP, and they've assured us that the model we use is the most cost-effective way of doing it. And then in point 3.1, which is on page 78, this is talking about our treasury portfolio at the end of 24-25, and then our current portfolio at the 1st of January 26. As you can see at the bottom, our net treasury investments, so our borrowing, is lower than it was last year, but that's purely to do with cash flow because of how we are. So most people pay council tax for 10 months of the year, and the way the precepts work, where we pay money over to county, we end up paying a precept payment in February and March. It's just because of how the dates work, so it means that we're holding on to, we're more cash rich at that time of the year. The table below on page 79 talks about if we're in an under or over borrow position. So it takes the CFR that we spoke about earlier, which is our financing requirement. It takes how much debt we have on our balance sheet, any other long-term liabilities and the expected change in those, and compares the two. So we're currently in an under borrowed position, which is good news. And then on page 80, it talks about the limits that I mentioned earlier that council approve. So it's our operational boundary for debt. So that's as I spoke about, the early warning sign. It talks about where, if that flag sort of thing, we start looking at stuff in a lot more detail. That's not to say we're not looking at it in lots of detail all the time. And then the authorised limit is our absolute limit for external debt. And then the rest of the information in the pack is prospective figures for interest rates, etc. And we've also got some information about debt rescheduling and what our agreed sources of external debt are. So at the moment, we only borrow from PWLB and local authorities. And then it goes into our investment policy. And then at the bottom, Yeah, so the last part of the report is talking about our investment policy, and then the table below talks about what counterparties we can use, and then it's got a like a traffic light system, and we get up-to-date ratings from all counterparties from our advisors daily. So we review who we're investing with daily. And then, yeah, that's everything in the report. So if you've got any questions, please let me know.
Any questions for Richard?
All right.
Right.
I did have one. It was about the 345 million authorised borrowing limit, and I wondered where that came from. But you've gone through that and explained that, so thank you.
Any more questions from anyone? No? Okay. Are members content to recommend to Council that the Treasury Management Strategy be approved?
Yep.
Okay. That report is approved and will be considered to Council on 26th of March. Moving on to agenda item 11, which is a capital strategy 2026-27. Richard, again?
He's on the roll to
Do you
keep
have
going.
an introduction? It's normally Piesh, but now it's you.
Thank you, Chair. You'll all be bored of my voice by the end of this meeting. So the capital strategy is something that we're required to produce by SITFA. It falls out, a lot of the information here falls out of the Treasury strategy, so a lot of the information is very similar, if not the same. So we talk about the background of the capital strategy, talks about the corporate plan and how that feeds into the capital strategy. We have the same tables again showing our capital spend and then our financing requirement. And yeah, and then into the last little bit, it talks about one thing to mention here, when it talks about debt including PFI and leases, we don't have any PFIs, but it's just something that we have to put in there. That's something that SITFA require us to put in. And then it talks about the governance of the capital team, etc. And any other implications. Yeah, so a lot of it is the same, but we have to produce the two strategies. But if you have any questions, let me know.
Any questions for Richard on this? No? Okay, that's lovely. Are members content to recommend to the Council that the capital strategy be approved? Okay, that report is approved and will be considered on Council on the 26th of March. The only thing next on the agenda is the work programme. Does anyone have any comments on the work programme? What's going to be next?
Terry's thinking. Yeah.
Any questions?
In many ways, I guess this is dictated to us anyway. Is it? Yeah.
Certain times, yeah.
Man. Okay, so just go back to that point again about awareness training for this, because it is important. So I think from a committee point of view, we need to build that in. And can I be respectful here and say that just putting us in front of a PowerPoint for a couple of hours is not always the best way of creating awareness. Yeah, there is. I've done some training with the LGA about local government finance. It was wonderful. But I actually met a guy who was the leader of a council, but also an accountant, and he was able to explain to people from his point of view as a councillor, but also being an accountant, you know, what the pressures and things were. So for me, if you stick me in front of a PowerPoint for an hour and a half, that's not that's not particularly helpful. I do think, you know, some discussion, in room and everything would be helpful. I know that's time consuming. I know it's complicated, but if we're going to get some value for some training, that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think the training that we provide, and I say we, not necessarily me, but whoever we get to provide it needs to meet the needs of the committee. We've been talking to the LGA because they do run a audit committee training. I think that's a full day actually, isn't it? So there is that, but also in addition to that, I think we need you to have a session with internal audit, external audit. We've already spoken, as Rich said, to our Treasury Management advisors about doing some training on that, some risk management training. So there'll be sort of bite-sized chunks as well as the sort of overall audit training. But we are putting something together, and we'll discuss that with the chair and vice chair initially, that meets your needs. We agree. You to fulfil your role on this committee, you need to have some training. Some of the information that you're being presented with is quite complicated.
I think everyone would be really appreciated for that. Yeah. A question, would that, as you say, the bite size, would that be included in evening like this, or would that be an extra session of training with little bit bite-sized bits?
I think most of them will probably be an extra session, but it depends. I mean, you know, external audit or internal audit sort of explaining sort of their role might be able to do that, sort of tagging on to a meeting. It depends really how long and the amount of questions.
Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Councillor Bucket?
Thank you, Chair. So this kind of training, do you think it should be training that comes with qualifications, recognised qualifications, or should it be more informal and tailored to our particular council's needs?
That's a good question.
I think it would be more the word is informal, not a specific qualification. It'd be tailored to your needs for fulfilling your role on this committee.
Right, I think that's it.
Does anyone have any other questions about what we've been discussing this evening?
No.
Okay. So the date of the next Audit and Governance Committee meeting will be Monday the 20th of April 2026. And thank you for coming this evening, and the meeting is now closed. Thank you.
Yes.